Talk some football before Monday night tonight. How similar, as you sort of get ready for this game, did the two teams strike you as being similar at all?
Well, I mean, I think Detroit has taken the next step. I mean, they're a team that, did get to the NFC Championship game and had a big lead at halftime and just let that slip away. I think they are a little bit more established, and I think the sad fact for the Seahawks really is the amount of injuries that they have, especially on the defensive side. But I like what they're doing on offense. I think Geno's played great. 2022 was amazing from him. Last year was good, not as good as 2022. And this year, with the new offensive coordinator, I think they found somebody in Ryan Grubb who was certainly not on my radar, and was a little bit outside the box as a hire. And we spoke with him yesterday. I think he's got a great plan. I just sense this is a very confident team, despite the aforementioned injuries. And I know just from talking to Mike, he's not worried about them. He's like, I know with our system and with the guys we have depth-wise that we can go in there and play as long as we can get them into third downs. He likes their chances in tonight's game. But I think there are some similarities there between these two organizations. But I think the Lions are a legit team that can say we should, if things go our way, be battling for the NFC Championship game. I don't think Seattle is there at the moment, but can certainly grow over the next year or two and get there like Detroit just has.
I don't want you to speak for Troy, but I am kind of deeply curious because Geno to me is fascinating. Right? It's almost as if, Joe, he's one of these guys whose narrative's been written, and no matter what he does, he's never really going to change the previous 10 years, no matter how well he plays. I feel like sometimes I have to scream from the rooftops of what this guy is doing. I am curious as Troy prepares and watches tape and talks to you and the crew and gets ready for the game tonight. How does Troy feel about Geno's game?
Really good player, and I agree with you about what you said. I think it's hard to shake that initial impression. I mean, he was in a tough situation with the Jets. You can dissect that 100 different ways. He's about to turn 34. Mm-hmm. But he does not have the wear and tear on him as the typical 33, 34-year-old quarterback, and he's playing at a very high level. I mean, he's completing passes at 75%. They're winning not with him, but many times because of him. And I think, that there's some questions on the offensive line, obviously, for Seattle. They've got the good receivers. They get Walker back tonight. There's a lot to like about this offense, but it doesn't go without Geno. And I'm with you. And I know Troy feels the same way. And when we talk to him, he's great. I mean, his attitude, at least from the interactions we've had with him over the years, he just seems a very positive guy that doesn't waver with his mindset. And he told us yesterday, I get into the weight room at 6 a.m. I like to lift 4 days a week at 6 a.m. and I look over the other side of the gym and there's my head coach who's, only a few years older than him. I think these two guys can do some good things with Seattle. I sense a lot of positivity around this team and kind of a refreshed attitude. And that's with all due respect to Pete, who we absolutely loved interacting with, and his body of work stands on its own. But I think that what they have going here is just a really good foundation, and it's all good things from here.
On the other side of it is a Detroit team who you said should be competing and seeing themselves in an NFC Championship game. I agree with you. How important do you think that revival is in that town, in that city, and for that team?
Well, it's huge. I mean, Troy and I were at Fox forever, and we would go to Detroit every other year for Thanksgiving. And while it was a great tradition, it was like, man, this is just going to be, this is just football for football's sake many times. And now it's completely different. And you think about how Dan Campbell started, they had, what were they, 3-13-1, and then they went like 1-6 the next year, but won 8 out of their last 10, and they won 12 games last year, and they're 2-1 now. And I just sense, the Tigers just made the playoffs in baseball. I sense a good feeling in this city, and you ask it because the city's been through a lot. I live in a town in St. Louis that has some similarities, and we in St. Louis like to identify with our sports teams, and I think that happens here in Detroit too. And when the team is not playing well, and in some cases it's just embarrassing the way they're playing, I think it just adds to the negativity and kind of misery. And now it's flipped. And Dan Campbell is a genuine, legit good guy who these players see as their leader. And he's not a phony. He is what he is. And what you think you see on TV, that's how he is when you talk to him privately. And he's just the perfect guy for this city and for this team. And the results, I think, speak for themselves, especially them 2 years ago winning that game, that freezing game in Green Bay when they had nothing to play for except to ruin the Packers.
Oh, interesting, John. Interesting you bring that game up. Oh, funny. That game, really resonated on this radio show because, that game really dictated whether the Seahawks made the playoffs or not. And maybe one of the two of us, I won't say who, bet his family, bet his mortgage. He didn't bet his own life, but he bet everything else that there's no way the guys in Honolulu Blue, Honolulu Blue are going to go into the frozen tundra and beat Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. I don't know. Do you remember that one at all, Salt?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't remember that at all?
Couldn't have been me.
Oh, it wasn't you?
That's all right. Giving them 0 or 0.1%?
Lions?
Yeah.
0.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big fat negative goose egg. Sorry. No chance, cannot win.
And this isn't even like reverse psychology. This isn't even you trying to. Okay.
That was a 0.
Bet the wife, bet the house, bet the kids.
That was a 0.0.
I mean, there was a little bit of history there that said the Detroit Lions weren't going to go to Green Bay and win at the end of the year. I felt pretty secure in that.
Exactly my point. And that's when everybody around the league sat up and went, oh, okay, things are very different in Detroit. And, I would have said the same thing, by the way, going into that game. I thought there would be no way, especially with nothing on the line except pride, and that tells you all you need to know about Dan Campbell and about this group. And I think they've carried that forward, and they could have very easily have been in the Super Bowl last year, which is an amazing turnaround. He's only in his 4th year. It feels like he's been here longer than that. But this has been pretty quick, this turnaround that he's orchestrated.
So when you talk about him, what I'm hearing a little bit is he almost gets it done through almost a sheer force of his personality. How many coaches in the NFL do you think are capable of that, have that kind of sheer force of will that they can make changes and affect changes just by kind of being themselves?
Well, I think those are the minority. I think there aren't many. And I do think that's what he does. I do think that's what he puts out there, and these players take their cue from. I absolutely do. And I think Mike McDonald is going to be that type guy, and doing fitness tests when you come into camp, and you're not going to play until it's very old school. It feels like, but you can't be old school and be a fake and be the tough guy that waits till the cameras are on or everybody's looking to flip over the table when you're mad. I think you have to be that way. You have to be consistent, and I think Mike is consistent. I know Dan is consistent. We had it with Dan Quinn last week, and I'm not saying he's that type guy, but he is the hat backward guy when nobody's watching, and he does believe in his guys, and they believe in him, and you see what he's doing, and it helps when you pick the right guy in the draft with Jaden Daniels, but it can happen, and I think these head coaches do make a huge difference with the tone that they're setting, and it's a fine line, and I think it's like a minefield in today's world. It doesn't matter the sport, the amount of money that players make, and what's the motivation? Is the motivation to make more money, or is the motivation to look around in a locker room and see somebody across the way and go, I want to win with you, and we're going to do great things as a team? And I think some head coaches can tap into that, and some just can't.
I want to protect your vocal cords. I really do. So this will be my final question for you, Joe. Just as you've prepped and you planned and you're getting ready for kick tonight, write the script. Write the script for success for the Seahawks to find a way to win in Motor City and to come back to Seattle tomorrow 4-0.
Well, I think what I said earlier is true. I think if Seattle can get Detroit, and Detroit talked about it, they have to try to get first downs on first and second down. They really don't want to get into third downs against Mike McDonald's defense, even with all of these injuries. So I think winning on first and second down is the key for Seattle. And then testing this run defense for Detroit. I'll say this, their defense is better than it was a year ago. And they made a concerted effort. Their top 4 corners, including their slot guy, Amik Robertson, they're all new from a year ago. And again, this was a team that went to the NFC Championship game. So their defense has kind of outpaced their offense here at the beginning of the year. So I think Mike McDonald's defense has got to go to work and get pressure up the middle. There's injuries on the offensive line for Detroit as they miss their second team All-Pro center Frank Ragnow, and they've changed a little bit up there, and that's where Goff struggles. If you can get pressure up the middle and win on first and second down, they can win the game.
All right, there you go.